All right, guys, the meat of the episode here is, do new editions of games cause you to lose your investment? Now, obviously, if you've been listening since the beginning of this episode, we talked in the news about Fantasy Flight coming out with a second edition of X-Wing, and the fact that you would spend $50 on a conversion pack for your faction in order to use all the Rebel ships, or in order to use all the Empire ships or whatever, or the neutral faction, the Scum and Villainy. So people are saying, I got to spend $150 to move all this stuff over.
Actually, prior I said 50, and I was like, well, that's kind of maybe acceptable if you put a lot of money into it. But now saying that's 50 per faction and there's 3 factions, that is quite a bit of change to incorporate your old stuff into the new.
And although you probably, I would assume you would need the starter box of the new edition as well if they do anything with the movement templates, or if you want to have a copy of the rule book, although you can probably end up printing that out. So I've got a bunch of questions here. Let's kind of run through these. First off, have you all experienced this in any of the games that you've played in the past? Now, I think it's important to note the difference between a board game second edition in a hobby game or competitive game,
right,
like a CCG or a collectible miniatures game like this is. There is a difference between a second edition of those games compared to a board game.
A lot of difference, right?
Yeah.
Because you put in a lot of time, a lot of money investment into one game.
Yeah.
And when it goes to, they're basically making a new version of your game that, you either stay in their old game and it's going to die out, or, at least get, less praise and less players because everybody's going to go on to the newer, better edition.
Well, yeah, that's correct. So starting with you, Eric, have you experienced this at all?
No, I wouldn't say I have. I usually don't go full bore on one game, so I haven't really experienced it myself.
What about you, Matt?
No, and I can't even think of any kind of like hobby game doing this, but
I
mean,
know,
it hasn't happened, but
like stuff like Magic does it. They'll get rid of the some of their older
set
cards
rotation. That's not the same though.
But it is,
that's coming.
Yeah,
it's different. So
and they even still have a format where you can use any card.
Yeah, I've experienced this actually a lot, and I'll kind of tell you this happens way often with hobby miniature games. So, like for instance, Warhammer is like on its like 8th edition now or something like that. Every edition, you have to buy the new rule book because you can't download them, or at least not legally. You can't, you have to buy the new rule book, which is like $60 usually, or like $40 if you buy it on like a discount site and stuff.
How big is this rule book?
They're huge.
Are they?
As a matter of fact, well, I'll get it in a second. The War Machine rule book is like this thick. It's like almost 2 inches thick.
Oh my goodness!
It is massive. But I mean, it has like a hobby section. It has a lot of all the basic stuff in it and stuff. I mean, all the rules, like a lot of fluff and story, a lot of novelization stuff.
So it's more than a rule book. It's basically a book for the game.
It is a hobby book for the whole hobby. So you got to buy that to have at least the new rules. On top of that, at least in 40K, you would have to buy a codex for your faction. The codex is basically like all the stats for all your models and etc. And in addition to that, if they've changed the templates for the attacking and things like that, sometimes you would have to buy upgraded templates. For War Machine did it as well. War Machine's on a 3rd edition of the game. Moving from the 1st to the 2nd edition, you had to buy the new rulebook. You also had to buy decks of cards to update all of your cards for your faction. You're talking $20 a deck. And if you played more than just one faction, at least you would have to buy your faction plus probably the mercenary faction deck to stay in. So you're paying $60 for a rule book at that point, maybe $50, and then $20 for each deck. It adds up. In that case, I think they did upgrade the templates, so you had to buy new templates as well. The 3rd edition did the same thing, where you had to buy new cards. Thankfully, though, Privateer Press has put all the actual rules of the book online for free download. It's not the fluff, it's not the stats or anything like that, or the hobbying section. But if you just want to have the rules up to date, you got that. You can also go online and print out all the cards. So you don't technically need to do as much now in the 3rd edition, but when it first came out, none of that existed. So you did have to, this was last year, I believe.
Oh, really? Wow.
So you did have to buy that stuff, but now you can get away with if you want to just print some stuff. I'm not 100% sure. I'm pretty sure you can print the cards and it's legal in tournaments.
Oh, really?
I wouldn't quote me on that, but with the way that the site's laid out, you basically type out your army and it prints out sheets for your army. But you can realistically print out everything if you wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
In addition to that, Mage Knight, the original collectible miniature game, came out with 2.0, which honestly I think killed the game, but that happened so you could use your old stuff, but you had to upgrade. That's really just buying the new starter box and stuff. It wasn't really that big of a deal for that one. Except for I think the 2nd edition models were way better in most cases because you can equip them with items and stuff like that.
That's sweet.
Yeah, it was pretty neat. There's some other games I totally am blanking out on. For instance, Fantasy Flight, the same company doing X-Wing, came out with the 2nd edition of the Game of Thrones card game. It originally started as a CCG, then you had to rebuy everything to go to the 1st edition. Now it's like the 2nd edition is a new edition totally. Like, I'm pretty sure you can't use anything from your original
No, I don't think so.
1st edition living card game and bring it over. So it has happened. It's not as big in like the collectible miniature games, but in the hobby world, those games, the 2nd editions, usually you have to buy new cards or books and stuff. Anyway, moving on. This is so what we were talking about earlier, Matt, you checked out Reddit and stuff. Did you check out anybody's like the forums and stuff on this?
No.
So what was your general perception of it?
And these sound like they are people who's been playing it a while. Evidently, there's some rules that I think Fantasy Flight might have botched in the very beginning, and they've been trying to design around this problem. So I think it finally hit a head. It sounds like Fantasy Flight's kind of dropping back and punting just to kind of reset the game. The general reception sounds like that most players are happy because whatever problems there were, they're fixing. This edition is actually adding in things that they feel it feels more Star Wars-y with the addition of what you have Force. Your pilots have Force now, so I don't know what that does, but evidently they're happy about it. Evidently the turrets were a big problem. They said that it was killing the game. They've changed something with the turrets.
I'm assuming those are the ones that can shoot in any direction.
Yeah, they can, I think, completely rotate around and everything.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It sounded like everybody was happy about it. Some people, yes, it is a lot of money to pay up front when you think of buying all the starter pack, and then for each faction. A lot of people combat that with saying that if you're a tournament player, most of the time you're only playing one faction anyways, which I think you even said that kind of with Warhammer, where you'll just buy it for whatever faction you're playing. So a lot of tournament players were kind of saying that. The one problem Fantasy Flight is doing, though, and they have a horrible tendency of doing this because playing living card games, they have their starter boxes, and they don't give you enough copies of things that you could use in a tournament setting.
Yeah, so you have
usually forces you to buy 2 of them.
Right.
And they've done that with everything they've ever put out.
Very common.
That is their thing. And the only big complaint I see is people complaining about the numbers of new like bases and everything that you're getting in the core set.
Yeah. And I noticed that some people say that if you run a lot of the same ship, like I think the conversion packs are going to have enough to cover like 4 TIE Fighter models, but if you want to run 6, then you have to buy 2 conversion kits.
Mm-hmm. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, but I mean that is a very minority of people.
Sure.
I'm going to go ahead and say that I'm on the side of Fantasy Flight. Like, I have seen this plenty of times, and it's always good for the hobby.
Yeah.
It is always good.
Well, making the game better.
Except if you're Games Workshop. For some reason, it's always good for them to upgrade. But you know what they did? They literally would upgrade, like go to the next edition, but completely destroy an entire faction. Like it's Left Behind. Like Catagen Jungle Fighters for Imperial Guard. Like I guess you could still use the models in different ways, but that entire sub-faction is gone.
They just left it out with the new edition?
Well, I don't know about the newest editions, but like I know when we were playing them, the next edition came out, my little brother was playing them, and they were all gone. So it's like he would just have to play base Imperial Guard at that point. They also do dumb stuff where they come out with like a book and they come out with another book like 6 months later. So like your book's not even out, so you're supposed to use the previous edition's book. They're a mess. Anyway, but it works for them.
Yeah.
But once everything gets released for the edition, it's usually better.
Right.
War Machine, everyone was super, super doom and gloom about the new edition coming out. Second edition and third edition. And I think it just gets better and better because they can redesign their design space. They can take stuff that you own that you don't play because it sucks, redesign those models to bring them back in.
Right.
Make them more competitive because of power creep. Right.
And that was another thing people were saying was going on with this was there was an obvious power creep happening, and it was kind of their player base was dropping. They felt like the game was dying off. I think this was kind of a revamp to put some more life into it.
Right.
There's also
it's been
evidently
out for a while.
There was also what they're adding medium-sized bases where they only had small and large. So evidently, I think this is for tournament rules and crap. I'm not totally sure, but.
That would make a lot of sense because they had some ships on a small base that
should have been on
not on a large, but yeah, shouldn't have been on a small base.
And they're saying these new bases will kind of fix some of that. They're also one of the big cool things. They can, I don't know if this is good or not. They can influence the meta a little bit, or at least bust it up if they see something happening. The point values on the cards are left off, and that's all app based, so they can completely like change the point values of ships. Like on the fly, if they see like something's going on, we'll wreck this up. We'll start changing point values on them.
That's phenomenal.
Yeah,
that is a good idea, right?
That is incredibly smart, especially if even if you don't have to have the app, if they just have a sheet printout with all the points. Man, that's good stuff.
Yeah. So it looks like they're actively trying to, like I said, spark a little bit more life into what's going on. Like I said, I didn't really see a whole lot of negative. The upfront money does sound like a lot, but a positive way I did read someone say was you're basically paying $300 when you do get everything to pretty much make your collection. You know, I just got maybe 100 ships.
That's true, yeah, because it's not like they're going to release wave after wave immediately for the second edition. It's going to start out slow. But you obviously can buy all the old stuff, or maybe they'll start coming out with the first edition stuff in 2.0 packaging or whatever. But I mean, I think this is a good thing. And the response I read was totally the opposite end.
Really? Yeah.
On Facebook and on Board Game Geek and stuff.
Okay. Well, like I said, I read from Reddit, so maybe it's just the source was different.
It could have been. And it also may have been like I read within the first couple of maybe 4 or 5 hours of this news coming out and stuff, and people were freaking out. Now I did go back to it as well, and it still is bad. But it was super surprising that Reddit is the most calm.
Reddit was pretty lax about it and kind of getting on people who were being negative.
Yeah, and like for me, like one guy was start saying they had this. I wasn't really responding too much, but one dude started saying no other game has ever done this, and I'm like, allow me to introduce you to the world of hobby miniature games, because this is literally most hobby miniature games. Malifaux's even done it. The Uncharted Seas games did it. I mean, I could probably go on and on if I sat back and actually looked at all the stuff I have. So many games come out with second editions, and it's always good because it keeps that.
It keeps the game a little fresher and updated.
And it keeps the power creep at bay. You know, Magic the Gathering and other CCGs, they just put a block format. Stuff's too powerful, it'll roll off.
It'll roll off. It'll go away eventually.
Yeah, and those people aren't complaining. They're literally spending 3-4 times the amount of money that you are just to get into the second edition, because they're going to buy booster boxes of the new stuff. And I'm not trying to say that justifies you needing to spend more money to play a game. But if you're complaining about this, you're a competitive player. That's it. If you're not a competitive player and you always feel like you need to have the newest version of X-Wing or whatever miniature game, do you really?
Yeah, right.
Like if you're playing it casually, there's no one stopping you from playing this game with your friends. If you go to events, you're a competitive player.
Yeah. You
might not play competitively, but you are a competitive player.
Right. You can still play the first version with your buddies if you want. Nothing's stopping you.
So, I mean, we kind of touched on this, but should companies try to fix the current version before moving on to a 2.0?
It's nice, and there's not always an option to. Like, you can't or you can do it like an upgrade pack, I guess, and which they're kind of doing, I suppose. But sometimes there's too much to fix an older edition. You just have to come out with a revamped, updated, newer edition.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like I said, from what I read, it sounds like they had a problem. Unfortunately, it forced a power creep, and I think that they felt like this might have been the only option. So it happens. I also know Fantasy Flight is really big. They will not ban they've hardly, like, whenever we were playing the Warhammer card game, I don't think they ever banned a card.
Oh yeah, they just rolled with it.
Yeah, they just go with it. The only thing they'll stop, if I remember right, was like they banned combos because they had a couple things that would do like infinite loops.
Well, that makes sense. Yeah, I mean, you could put a global, if it would trigger off the same 2 cards more than once, it stops at twice or something.
Well, no, what they did, they just said you couldn't have this card in a deck with this one. They just completely said you can play these cards, just not together.
Oh, I guess that makes sense.
Yeah, but they were pretty known for. I'm pretty sure they never banned a card. It might have been one at the most, but they just, it was just like their thing. They're like, we're not banning cards, not having it. They might have rat them. That happens, but especially in a living format.
Yeah, I mean, I noticed they did that a lot with like some of the Netrunner cards too, and the Game of Thrones. Like I played the first edition or whatever, not the second. I don't know, like from a casual perspective, if I'm playing a game and they come out with a second edition like the Game of Thrones, I'm probably done at that point. So I think this is a strict. This is going to keep the competitive players playing, and it's going to bring in new people.
Right.
But if you're casual, you're probably done at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I don't see why you would need to keep going. But, I mean, you don't lose any of your stuff.
Right.
As a matter of fact, the way they're doing it to where you convert it and stuff, your stuff still has value. You can sell it to other players, and even if they have the conversion kit, they can run that stuff too.
Right.
Because they may not own all of those ships anyway. I don't know. I guess I had a bunch of points here, but most of them we kind of covered randomly or talked about. Is there anything else you want to add to it? Or?
Let's see here. No, I think I kind of touched on everything I said. No, I ain't got nothing.
What about you, Eric? I should say that in the microphone.
No, I don't have anything else.
All right, cool. Well, yeah, there's that.